Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I am your host, Patrick Darms,
And I'm your co-host, Anton Pras.
and we have a return guest with us here today, Peter Baldeo. Welcome back to the podcast.
Welcome back, Pete.
Thank you, guys.
Excited
Thank you.
to have you on. How many bonds is this for you now? It's a few.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank you guys for helping me get towards my 2025 goal of seeing all the Bond movies, which I haven't seen yet.
Nice.
You're well on your way.
You've seen Bond evolve a lot.
Yeah, I think, Pat, it's got to be 8 or 9. I got to be like 30 or 40% through. Definitely not 50 yet, because there's 26, right?
You're 50% of the way through Timothy Dalton.
That is true. I am.
That's fun. It's fun. I was at a shop recently. It was a thrift shop that had every pre-Daniel Craig James Bond film on VHS in like in excellent condition.
Sweet.
I sent the photo to Pat. So,
How much was it?
oh, like each VHS was like $1 each. It's not worth much.
Oh, that's super cool, though. Definitely a collector's item.
Yeah.
There's
Who has a VHS player at this point, though?
No one.
I do.
It's
I do.
How often do you use it, Anton?
Very rarely.
Less than once a year?
Probably like twice a year, like exactly twice a year.
Okay. You have it like scheduled?
Kinda. Yeah.
August 10th.
August 10th. That's when I want to
VHS
watch
Friday, baby.
these Pokemon VHSs that have content that don't live anywhere else.
What are you guys doing for 8-Track Tuesdays?
Oh man, those are the days.
It's funny how vinyl has made a pretty significant comeback, but not really anything else has.
The vinyl thing makes sense to me because it's it's
Yeah.
collectible. It looks nice. It makes the music artwork.
It does. It does. But speaking of artwork, this is the last James Bond movie to feature a painted movie poster.
Gotta enjoy it.
Oh,
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yes. I believe Photoshop was invented the following year in 1988, and they used it ever since, which, most movie posters are just Photoshop stuff now. But I got to say, the vintage painted poster stuff it's pretty cool.
Yeah, totally. And I think is that a good segue into today's episode?
Yeah, let's get right into it. So today's film is The Living Daylights. James Bond is sent to investigate a KGB policy to kill enemy spies after a top-ranking KGB officer defects, and he uncovers an arms deal that potentially has major global ramifications. The Living Daylights was released on June 29th, 1987 by Eon Productions and United Artists, directed by John Glenn, screenplay by Richard Maibaum and Michael G. Wilson, based on the short story by Ian Fleming, starring Timothy Dalton, Miriam Diabo, Yorian Krabbe, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Joe Don Baker, the world's greatest B-movie actor, John Rhys Davies, Art Malik, Andreas Wisniewski, and Thomas Wheatley. The budget was $40 million. That is $110 million adjusted for inflation. And the box office was $191 million. That is $530 million adjusted for inflation. So it's the 15th film in the series. It is Timothy Dalton's debut as James Bond. Anton, it's really tough to call this the beginning of the Dalton era because he unfortunately only got 2 films. He has a small, but I would say very dedicated fan base. He is the hipster's James Bond in some ways. In some ways, he was ahead of his time, which we're going to talk about. This is a noteworthy film in the series for a couple of other reasons. Number one, it's the last film in the series to really involve the Cold War, which is pretty significant. And then 2, it is the final film in the series to be scored by the one and only John Barry.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely only scratched the surface and all the fun nuggets of information that comes with The Living Daylights. Pretty momentous film when it comes to, let's call it, the Timothy Dalton chapter, not lesson era.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
But man, it is quite a step in a different direction with a lot of influence to future James Bond. But there's a bit more that we can dig into before we even get there. So should we go into our production history?
Well, we should, but I do want to turn things over to our guest just for a moment. Because, Pete, you went into this blind. You didn't know anything about Timothy Dalton, right?
Nope. I literally had no idea who this guy. It took me like 10 minutes to figure out who Bond actually was when I started the movie. I thought it was a different type of Bond, but I think he did the job well. I also don't know if I would call him a hipster's James Bond.
Well, what I was, I was only being slightly sarcastic when I said that. He is often the answer that you will hear, and then they will usually tell you, like, Dalton, he's just so underrated. Well, you can talk about that.
Yeah,
I just think
I see what you mean there.
Yeah, we're going to get more into it. I think it is tough to judge him because he only did 2 films, so you really don't know what his era would have looked like because he didn't get an era. Every other actor had, except for George Lazenby, who only had the one, every other actor had multiple films, and you really got a sense of what their Bond was, quote unquote, like.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I hadn't seen this in a while. I haven't watched the Daltons a ton.
Okay.
What about you?
It's definitely been a minute. The one thing I remember from this film was the Mujahideen.
Oh, you mean the future Taliban?
Yeah,
that aged well.
Yeah, this is it has somewhat in common with Rambo 3, where you just watch it now, you're like, huh.
Yeah.
It's not going to go well. But all right, let's buckle up.
Yeah.
Well, it was the 80s. They were our friends.
It was the 80s, Pat. Yeah. And I like Timothy Dalton as an actor. He's been in a lot of really great stuff. I especially loved his character in Hot Fuzz.
Yes, he's fantastic in Hot Fuzz.
Have you seen that, Pete?
Wait. Was this the movie with Sean?
Yeah. Yep.
The guys that did
Simon Pegg.
Yes. Okay. I had to see the poster. Yes, I remember this movie. I do. He's Mr. Skinner.
He's the bad guy in one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, The Rocketeer.
Yep.
I think I mentioned this to you, Anton. He popped up pretty recently in the last season of The Crown, and he was just in one episode, and he was phenomenal.
Oh, okay. I'm very excited for that. So
yes, it's in the last season. He plays a character from the first season, of course, much older, and he's still doing his thing. You know, he's still working. He looks really good for his age. It was great to see him in that. He still has the acting chops, man.
Yeah. No, it's great to see, and I definitely think that while he'd had a very short chapter, there's definitely an impact of Timothy Dalton that I'm sure we all appreciate.
I almost want to see, like tonight, I almost want to see the second one, just because I can say I've watched the entire Dalton era, just to see if I can be one of those guys.
It's very different than this one.
See, I don't like that.
Well, I mean, I don't want to. You might like it. A lot of people like License to Kill.
You're not really selling this one to me.
It involves the war on drugs.
Oh boy, this is going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Oh, because I guess the Cold War was over.
Yeah. Anyway, let's do the production history of this. So, after A View to a Kill premiered in May of 1985, Roger Moore announced that he was finally retiring from the role. He was 57 years old. He looked every bit of it in that film, and thus began the search for the next James Bond. Throughout the first half of 1986, several actors auditioned for the role, including Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and Sam Neill, Alan Grant from Jurassic Park. And if you're curious, you can see Sam Neill's audition tape on YouTube.
Oh,
it's available. Michael Wilson. It's they made the right decision. Let's just say that. Michael Wilson, director John Glenn, Dana and Barbara Broccoli were, quote, impressed with Sam Neill and very much wanted to use him, end quote. However, Cubby Broccoli was not convinced. Right decision. Years later, Neill said he never wanted the role. Don't believe it. Jerry Weintraub, the chairman of MGM UA Communications, suggested hiring Mel Gibson, but Broccoli rejected the idea. It's the right decision. After a 3-day screen test, Pierce Brosnan was cast as the new James Bond. He was best known to audiences for the TV series Remington Steele at the time, which had recently been canceled by NBC. However, the announcement of him playing Bond caused a renewed interest in the series, and this is really unfortunate for Brosnan. With less than 3 days remaining on his contract, NBC renewed the series for another season, effectively blocking him from becoming James Bond. Broccoli withdrew the offer, claiming he, quote, did not want the character associated with a contemporary television series, end quote. He would have to wait almost 10 years to be James Bond.
Scumbag move.
Cubby Broccoli's wife, Dana, suggested Timothy Dalton, and she urged her husband to meet with the actor, having just completed Brenda Starr. Dalton was offered the role, which he accepted. He arrived on set the day before filming was set to begin. Broccoli tried to spin things, saying that Dalton had been his top choice all along, but it's important to remember that Dalton was an 11th hour replacement for Brosnan.
English actress Miriam Diabo, a former model, was cast as Cara Milovi. General Gogol was originally going to be a big part of the story, but Walter Gotell wasn't wealthy enough to film all of the required scenes, or wasn't healthy.
He wasn't
healthy enough.
I don't know about his personal wealth.
wasn't healthy enough to film all the required scenes, so the character of Pushkin was invented. Gittel was able to appear at the end in a cameo. At one point, Broccoli and Wilson considered doing this film as a prequel, an idea that eventually resurfaced with the reboot of the series in 2006, Casino Royale. And speaking of Casino Royale, this was the last film to use the title of an Ian Fleming story until Casino Royale in 2006. Principal photography began in September 1986 at Rock of Gibraltar. Filming was primarily done at Pinewood Studios, as well as
Weiss-Nisi.
Weissenice in Austria. Vienna stood in for Bratislava, which was still behind the Iron Curtain at the time. The desert scenes were filmed at both the Mojave Desert and in Morocco, and filming concluded in February 1987. It was the first time Barbara Broccoli received an official credit. And Norwegian pop group a-ha was chosen for the title song. The group and John Barry did not collaborate well, resulting in 2 versions of the theme song. The Pretenders were originally considered to perform the title song, but the producers felt a-ha would provide a more commercially successful song. In a first for the series, the film was the first to use different songs over the opening and end credits. The Pretenders contributed 2 songs for the film, both of which are heavily woven into the score by John Barry. John Barry has a cameo as a conductor of the orchestra at the end of the film. And sadly, the last drawn and painted poster in the series, as Pat mentioned, is with this film. And we appreciate it. And the film sits at a 73% Rotten Tomatoes score. And that, dear listeners, is The Living Daylights.
Let's talk why wasn't it better, or in some cases, why wasn't it worse? Because I think in a lot of ways, this was an improvement over Roger Moore's final film, A View to a Kill. We have to start with the new Bond himself, Timothy Dalton. What do we think?
I like him.
Yeah.
I think he's fantastic.
I do. I think he's very good. I remember reading somewhere that they wanted to humanize Bond, and I think he did a great job playing the character. And I wrote down one of the scenes that I thought was like one of the most human things is when he's talking to Kara in the car, and she's like, "You need to go back and get my cello." He's like, "We're not going." And then it cuts to him just sitting there with his hand on his fist, and I was like, that's human, right? Like that to me is cool. And then he drives away and is super badass like Aston Martin.
You're right, Pete. It's such a relationship moment.
Yes.
Any relationship that you've ever been in with a woman, you know exactly what he's going through.
I've been there. Exactly.
Yeah, we
right?
all have. Yeah,
we're never going to say no, right? We're going to be like, yep, you're right.
Yeah.
We need to go back.
Well, it's a good thing they did because it was a Stradivarius.
Which is fair. Which is totally fair.
Pretty good point.
Yeah.
I think one of the most interesting things with having Timothy Dalton in, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, is stepping into the shadow of the previous Bond before them, whether it's Roger Moore stepping in for George Lazenby, or, of course, now Timothy Dalton stepping in after Roger Moore. Continuity aside, we have a James Bond that seems a bit, how do we say, annoyed at his work, or just a little jaded with things. And I feel like having that same nuance and for the audience to be able to really read that speaks to the acting in volumes for Timothy Dalton.
And that's going back to Fleming, right? The not particularly enjoying his job, that is very much literary Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it's, sorry, Pat, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Dalton, that is exactly what Dalton was going for. He went back to the source material. He read all of the novels. He wanted to bring Fleming's influence on the character to the screen. And I love it. I love this deadly serious, hard edge approach to the material that he did. I mean, Pete, you're right. The humanization of Bond, he definitely succeeded. Dalton said about this quote, "I read a couple of the books years ago, and I thought I'd find them trivial now, but I thoroughly enjoyed every one. It's not just that they have a terrific sense of adventure and you get very involved. On those pages, I discovered a Bond I'd never seen on the screen, a quite extraordinary man, a man I really wanted to play, a man of contradictions and opposites."
It's a great description.
I love the line he says to Saunders no, it's not the pre-title sequence, but it's very early in the film when they're getting out of what's supposed to be Bratislava. You know, when Saunders basically tells him, like, you disobeyed orders, you were supposed to kill that sniper. I'm gonna
Stuff my orders.
Yeah, I'm gonna include that in my report. And Bond says, "Stuff my orders. If he fires me, I'll thank him for it."
Yeah. And I was like, damn, that's badass.
Yeah.
All right, Bond.
I mentioned this to you before we recorded, Pete. He's a classically trained Shakespearean actor, and you can tell.
You could see it.
Mhm.
You could see it. I think the other thing that makes me, I guess let's call it privilege, right? You guys have seen every Bond in the evolution up to Daniel Craig. Like, I'm watching it backwards. So I'm seeing what they became and where they came from. So it's like always super cool for me to go to see a different Bond because I don't know what the Bond was like before. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. And
Like, if you're watching, and hopefully I get the chronology right. If you're watching Roger Moore, you're going to compare the next person to Roger Moore, right? Whereas I'm just like, oh, we're comparing it to Daniel Craig. But in reality, it's like that's who gave birth to Daniel Craig.
Yeah.
I just had a weird image of Dalton giving birth to Daniel Craig.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry
we
to
don't
put
know
in
that
your
he didn't. I mean,
head.
Yeah.
True. It's true. Sorry to put that in your head, guys.
and then the scene where he's bickering with M in the office.
Mhm.
It's like that's not really something that you had seen before in Bond.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
Disagreements.
you'd seen I feel like just more of a fun dialogue between the two, but this was a very much more rebellious Bond.
Yeah, and number one, he really threw himself into the action. Dalton took it upon himself to do as many of the stunts as he can, or as he was able to. I think you can tell he sells the physicality of it. In the pre-title sequence, obviously there's some stunt performers doing some of the shots, but he's really on that Jeep.
It's cool, man.
It's
I always
great. And that's a big difference, Anton, between this and something like A View to a Kill, where Roger Moore was doing none of the stunts.
I'm not gonna do that.
And look, we love Roger Moore, but if there's one weakness to his portrayal of Bond, it was the physical stuff, I think.
It's not fair.
And I think a very conscious thing about at least the writers now at this stage within the Bondverse is how to leverage the strengths of the actor playing Bond, and I think they really did lean into that with Dalton.
He gets all the lines right, I think. When he lands on the boat at the end of the pre-title sequence, it's great. When he says, I'll report in an hour, and then she gives him the champagne, he's like, better make that 2.
The way he says his name too, it feels like there's no ceremony around it. Like he doesn't linger on Bond, James Bond. It's just Bond, James Bond.
It's a throwaway almost.
Yeah, and I think like that subtlety is just a sign to the kind of Bond that we should expect through the film, and it's what we got.
Yeah, it's the first thing I wrote was LOL at the scene where he lands on the boat with the lady floating on the boat by herself. I was literally like,
Pretty legit.
this is gold. Like, this is absolute gold. I loved it.
He gives us the best title drop of the entire series. Whoever she was, it must have scared the living daylights out of her.
Yeah, that is true. Because I was waiting for it, and then I heard it. I was like, that was pretty good, right? Like
he deadpans all the one-liners, but some of them are really good. When he ambushes Pushkin in the hotel room, which is one of the best scenes in the film. When he confronts Pushkin at gunpoint.
Oh,
he does this thing where he's real brutal with his wife or girlfriend.
Yeah.
And Pushkin says, I take it this isn't a social call. And he says, correct, you should have brought lilies. You're like, damn, man.
Okay.
And then he got the boot. He met his Waterloo. Just gets it right.
Job,
and so, Pete, you've seen at least one Roger Moore film. I can't picture Moore doing anything in this film.
No, I can't. I honestly like the guy, man. And I wish he had more time. I feel bad that he was taken out due to, let's call it bureaucracy and corporate ownership. But I feel like he could have been a good Bond. And honestly, Daniel Craig is just basically Roger Dalton years later without some of the knee slap stuff like, oh, stop looking at the girls, Bond.
I love how you mistakenly said Roger Dalton, but it also works for this.
Yeah.
Did I say that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Pat and I both noticed. So I was like, oh, that's cool.
Roger Daltrey, whatever.
Richard Daughtry.
Scroban.
Pierce Connery? What?
Oh, I like that.
You know what the weird part is, too, Anton?
Mm-hmm.
I want to get your take on this. I can't picture Brosnan in this either.
No, I mean, it's a very...
But he was supposed to be in this.
He was supposed to be. And I feel like that's where kind of history has placed itself naturally with of how things played out. Brosnan's too busy with Remington Steele, and so we can't get Brosnan. But there's probably another universe where we got Brosnan a little too early. He's in License to Kill. And then they're like, well, now we have to find a different Bond.
So they picked Sam Neill. And then Roger Dalton is Dr. Alan Grant.
Sure.
I don't know how to wrap my head around it because, like, Brosnan was cast in the film, and it's not like this screenplay wasn't written for Dalton or Brosnan. I guess it was a pretty neutral screenplay because they started writing it before they knew who the new Bond was going to be. I wonder if they would have changed some of it to accommodate Brosnan. We'll never know, but to your point, Anton, I think it worked out because I love what Dalton does here, and yeah, maybe it would have been too soon for Brosnan because I for the most part like the Brosnan era.
Yeah, I grew up with the Brosnan era as much as I also watched the other Bond films. I remember seeing like, oh, the Pierce Brosnan is in theater as James Bond. That was my James Bond growing up. And I feel like iconic in his own right, but at this time, I feel like we definitely had the right timeline.
It's funny you say that, Pat, because I'm trying to think of like Brosnan was in GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies,
The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day.
Die Another Day.
Die Another Day. I don't think I can see the jokes landing. Yeah, now that I think about it, I see what you mean. It would have felt like me playing James Bond.
I think the best thing Dalton brings to this role is the hard-boiled spy stuff. I'm telling you, that scene where he confronts Pushkin in the hotel room, like, you really believe he might kill him in cold blood.
Yeah. It's like a Bourne movie in a way.
It is. The other standout for me is how he reacts to Saunders' death, where he pops the balloon with his hand. He's just enraged.
Yeah.
You don't see that a lot. You certainly didn't see a lot of that in the Roger Moore era.
He's human.
Remember, he pulls a gun on that kid accidentally. It's like it's a pretty dark moment for a Bond movie.
It's a very grounded moment.
Yes.
I think it captures like the idea of like typically Bond is Bond, right? He's the super agent. He has everything he needs. He's put together. But like realistically, like some of the CIA agents who are great, they're highly volatile people, right? So I think it actually, like to that point about humanizing, it shows the fact that he is conflicted with some of the things that he's told to do as an agent, like shoot Koskov's girlfriend. It speaks to that human element that we mentioned.
Yeah. Now, do we think he's as charismatic as Connery?
I don't think so. It's a much more subtle charm.
If there's one quibble I have with Dalton's performance, he doesn't quite sell the ladies' man thing to me. Even though I think he's a pretty handsome guy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
With Connery, you really did believe he could get any woman he wanted.
Yeah, not with Dalton. And there's also only like a few. I feel like there was less of that in this movie. Like there was like a few lines.
It was on purpose,
right?
Yeah.
There's a few lines in there, but some of them are like. I think the last one we were looking at, he's like staring at her breast through the binoculars.
I mean, Pete, do you want to take a guess why during this era they didn't want to have someone having like just random sexual encounters?
Presuming HIV?
Yeah, AIDS crisis.
Although in A View to a Kill, Anton, he does have sex with 4 women.
Before it hit headlines?
No, this was after it. I mean, including Iceberg Boat.
Yeah.
I also feel like Connery's movies were a little different. This was a serious spy movie for at least half.
He ends up romancing Kara, right?
Yes.
But when he first meets her, he's definitely manipulating her, which is like, it's definitely spy stuff, but it's the type of romancing we haven't seen Bond do before. You could almost say he's playing her like a cello.
Oh.
Ooh. And then he did play her like a cello?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that because he's definitely believable as a spy, and that is something a spy would do, right? He's using her to get information. He's using her to get the Koskov.
Yeah.
Yeah. If anything, when it comes down to like how I compare this to especially the Roger Moore era of espionage, this feels even closer to like a more traditional espionage thriller and kind of those grounded elements. And I'm trying to think of maybe even some contemporaries that it feels like. Maybe is it more of like a
John le Carré for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, with the twists and turns and the layers to the story, maybe too many.
I was going to say,
about,
but I feel like maybe the flip side of that is trying to make this film a bit more grounded or a bit more quote unquote serious. Is that maybe it put it on a bit too thick and then also became a little convoluted.
But we like him. He gets a bum rap, man. He really does.
He does. He does.
I think in some ways, if you're not familiar with the series, I think for whatever reason, that long hiatus after License to Kill gets held against him for some reason, which is completely unfair, and it wasn't his fault at all. And he only did the 2 movies, so he doesn't have a signature film, right? Like Connery has Goldfinger, Moore has The Spy Who Loved Me, Brosnan has Goldeneye, right? Craig has Casino Royale. Like what's Dalton's signature? He doesn't have one, and he deserved it. He definitely deserved the 3rd film.
I see what you mean. Yeah, I guess you're right. They do hold that against him and it's not his fault. He's like, I did the best I could, and that was it.
You haven't seen License to Kill, right, Pete?
No, not yet.
A lot of Bond fans like it. I can't stand it.
It's very different.
It's a very different movie than this. A lot of people really like it. It's very popular in the Bond community. It's honestly might be my least favorite film in the series. Now, I like him in it. I like his performance in it.
You guys,
but like I said, if you like drug lord villains, you'll like License to Kill.
All right. You guys booking me for another episode, or?
No, that one's booked. Sorry.
All right, that's fair. I still have to watch him.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie to check out if you've never seen it. But what's worth pointing out here, Anton, audiences certainly liked Dalton at the time. This made $40 million more than A View to a Kill. So the new Bond thing didn't affect the box office returns with this one. License to Kill, obviously, that did not do well.
Right. And it really is film to film, I feel like, with the chasing of audience tastes. And I think that especially with going into the new era of the 90s and what action stars were evolving into and what action films were becoming, it made sense that it also evolved Bond, and that gave an opportunity for Pierce Brosnan as well. But even just with this film, Timothy Dalton took a very more serious tone and different take for James Bond, which, I mean, Pete, I'm sure you'd agree. How much influence do you see of this in Dalton's Bond with like Daniel Craig's Bond?
Oh my God, it's nearly identical. Like, you see the suaveness, this is the inspiration for Daniel Craig, right? I see why they chose Daniel Craig after watching this, because Daniel Craig's movies are different, right? There's very little of the knee slap James Bond, ha ha ha. It's just pure, serious British MI6 agent. Like, that's what it is. And I respect that.
And I'm sure Pete and Pat, you recall all of the critics or even just audiences saying, "Wow, you're seeing such a brutal Bond with Daniel Craig." But it seems memory's a little short when we think about Timothy Dalton.
Yeah, I feel like he's Timothy Dalton, just years in the future, right, with better special effects, and that's what most of his movies played out like. Except the Spectre, that one was kind of weird.
Yeah, the movie sucks.
Yeah, the other ones were good, but Spectre was a little questionable.
Agree to disagree. I think his era is pretty uneven.
Yeah, I think that's fair. His peak was Casino Royale, but this is about the great Roger Dalton. I mean, Timothy.
Roger Daltrey, yeah. Next reason why this wasn't better, and this is a real reason why it wasn't better, in my opinion, the villains. Now, for the second time in 3 films, and this is, Pete, no coincidence you're on for this movie as well. We get
guys, man.
We get 2 primary villains. We get General Georgy Koskov and Brad Whitaker. Unlike Octopussy, however, I don't find either one of these guys memorable or entertaining. I think they both cancel each other out.
Yeah.
Really, really bad, really poor villains. But I'd give a plus for the henchmen.
Yeah, I think Necros was great, man. Necros was good, but the villains don't really, you don't really understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, we'll talk about their plan in the next reason, which is extremely convoluted.
The guy Whitaker, I didn't when they first introduced him. I thought the whole the wax museum of people, that's not cool, dude. That's creepy.
I introduced him by saying the world's greatest B movie actor. He is a B movie actor.
Yes, yep. I agree with that.
He is literally on a number of films that were parodied on Mystery Science Theater.
And maybe would have
Mitchell.
I think maybe would have fit a bit nicer into the aesthetic of A View to a Kill, but
yes. Let's start with Koskov, played by Yorian Crab. Crabbe, sure. He is initially introduced to us as an ally, as a defector. He's friendly. He's kind of goofy. I just think it's a really poorly acted part. It's what he reminds me of? A friendly but annoying neighbor on a sitcom.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good description.
Yeah, I think when I like to think of this same stereotype, I mean, this is probably also played out over and over, and a bit more, even audiences probably felt like this was, a bit overdone.
That scene in when he's at Whitaker's compound. He's like, "I told you the British believe me. I told you."
I just hate the guy from the minute I meet him, dude.
Did
Here's
you
my-
recognize him from The Fugitive?
So bad
No.
news. I've actually never seen The Fugitive with
Jesus.
Harrison Ford. I know.
That's
I know.
sad. That's one of the best movies of the 90s.
I know.
That movie's so sick.
And if you want to see Tommy Lee Jones, how he won his Oscar, you see that movie.
All right, because I remember thinking that I was like, man, I definitely saw this movie, but I think I've only ever seen pieces of it because like my cousins were watching it, but I don't think I've ever sat down.
Oh, it's so worth watching.
Maybe we'll
It's a
watch it
classic.
today.
It's so good. Anyway, so Koskov sucks for you too, Anton.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. It's all
Look,
around.
it's just not this. Koskov is just not a compelling villain.
He doesn't seem particularly smart. He doesn't seem particularly threatening.
Which is interesting in that most of the film is around being a bit more grounded or being a bit more believable, but not Koskov.
And he's supposed to be a general defecting from the KGB,
Yes.
Yeah.
the Soviet Union, and he's just hugging. Like, aren't these guys supposed to be ruthless killers?
I think you pose a really great point. If he's supposed to be a counterpart to Bond in the KGB,
Oh, I don't
just
think
don't
he's supposed to be a counterpart. I never
I
got the
just-
sense. No, because
Yeah.
remember when he's defecting, he's like, he doesn't act like a field agent at all. He's a
No,
desk man.
no.
He just seems like a
Yeah.
desk guy.
Yeah, and like if you're embezzling money, like you have to be pretty high up because like you're trying
He's a
to embezzle
general. I
money.
think he's a general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this guy should be striking the fear in the hearts of everyone, not hugging James Bond after the cello concert. Come on, and this is the villainry that we're talking about.
Yeah, tonally a little weird.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair.
So the other bad guy, Brad Whitaker. I mean, look, I was clowning on Joe Don Baker as a B movie actor. I actually like him in the future Bond movies where he plays Jack Wade in the Brosnan films. But here doesn't work for me as the villain. Because is he the mastermind? It's like
Doesn't sound like it.
it's not clear. Just like with Octopussy, it's like which one of these guys is the main villain? It's not entirely clear.
Just like Necros is the main villain.
One quick bit on Whitaker, though. I do like the finale in his war room when he actually gets the drop on Bond when he's playing with
a
his
bit more-
toy soldier stuff.
Yeah.
A bit more tension.
He also has a good line that I like when he said it's a callback to Dr. No, and he said, "You've had your 8, now I'll have my 80."
Classic callback.
I like that scene, Pete, because Bond looks pretty scared when he's got the remember he's playing with the cannon stuff and everything. You're like, wow, this is kind of
Something's gonna go wrong here.
yeah.
Mhm.
What was there any commentary regarding why they chose his obsession with his obsession with toy soldiers?
I think they just wanted to do him as the military nut job.
Oh.
Yeah, I think if it's an angle of over an obsessive compulsive thing,
Got it.
Right. And he's a total fraud, which Pushkin points out to him. You got kicked out of West Point for cheating. You worked as a mercenary. You're not really a soldier. You're full of shit.
So that's supposed to be his cover. He's a fraud.
Right. Which kind of makes me respect him less as a villain. I'm like, all
Exactly.
right.
You've built this gigantic war empire on being a fraud. I don't know if I necessarily buy that.
But we do get Necros, who's one of the best henchmen in the series. He's awesome.
Yeah. I think you could have described him as the main villain, man. I think if you look at this movie, main villain title's up for grabs.
I think he's my favorite part of the film.
yeah, he's just so. It looks like he's always on the catwalk, but then he'll also crush your skull.
When he shoots that guy at the beginning of the movie, I was like, man, this guy's scary.
Super scary.
I remember as a kid watching this and just being blown away by the milk bombs.
Oh yeah,
I was like, whoa. I still haven't really seen anything like that in a movie. It's pretty original.
yeah. When it comes to henchmen, definitely one of the most memorable, and definitely makes it for the movie.
Easily. Total master of disguise, how he's doing all the different voices.
He's like Agent 47 from Hitman.
In a lot of ways, yeah, he is.
Oh yeah, very, especially with the way he dispatches people.
Yeah. Shout out to when I think they're researching the Russian assassins, and they're going through the Russian assassins, and they're like, "Oh, she died by explosive teddy bear method of assassin." I was like, "These guys are ruthless." And then
Very.
Koskov is the guy that defects, right?
Yes. His raid on the Bladen safe house when he's just taking out people and doing all the different voices. I forgot how awesome that fight is when he fights the guy in the kitchen.
I wish there was a kill
Yeah.
counter.
Yeah, choreography also just looks very different. I mean, also shot very differently from View to a Kill.
Shot better for sure. Anton,
Yeah.
did you recognize the parrot from For Your Eyes Only?
Oh my gosh, it's that same damn parrot.
Yep.
That's so funny.
Previously belonged to Diana Rigg, obviously. You know what? That parrot might be alive.
Might be, yeah.
Seriously, like it might
parrots
be.
live a long time.
They do.
Do they?
A macaw like that will live 80 years.
Wow.
Seriously, I'm like
If they're
if you
taken care
bought
of,
if you bought one now, it would outlive you.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah,
Does that just mean I'm old?
I mean, that's a long time for a pet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true though. It's kind of sad though. Your owner just dies and then you just go off into the world.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
that's
really
why
yeah.
you carry on the macaw to the next generation, right?
Yeah, they get attached to their owners, and when the owners dies, it's really, really hard to like rehabilitate them.
That's so sad.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so that parrot appears in another Bond movie, Pete, For Your Eyes Only, and actually plays a pretty significant part of the plot, believe it or not.
All right, wait. For Your Eyes Only, who's that?
Roger Moore.
Ah, the great Timothy Moore.
Yes, that guy.
Yeah, Timothy Moore.
Timothy Moore, my favorite Bond.
Yeah, give me more Necros.
Yeah, I liked him. I still think you guys keep calling him a henchman. I think there's no clear villain. Like he can push, and like if villain is associated with Bond of like deaths accrued, I mean he's the guy. No,
he's certainly one of the most competent henchmen.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it.
Do you almost feel bad when he dies, when he falls out of the plane?
I kind of do, but
Great,
he had to go.
great scream.
I feel like it was a fitting death for him though.
He got the boot.
I think it's one of the best build-ups to how unstoppable he felt as a henchman, and so finally when he's taken out, it's like that's phew. That was not easy.
Yeah, like he was the pre-boss before the final boss.
Well, that's one of the other problems with the villains. All right, he gets the showdown with Whitaker, but we'll get to the ending of this film and the fate of Koskov, which is completely lame. I have a note about that, Anton. I want to hear your opinion on this later. Mm-hmm. For now, I'm including Pushkin under villains, even though he's really not. I like John Rhys Davies, but Anton, it would have been way better if it was Gogol. It just makes way more sense.
It just would have been cooler, and I think like not only just being, not just being like a Bond fan and just seeing Gogol again, that would have been cool. But yeah, just doesn't do it for me. But a lot of respect for, of course, the great John Rhys Davies.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why it couldn't be Gogol because the actor was sick, but it's like, the scene where Bond is arguing with M and he says, I know Pushkin, I can't believe he's a psychotic. That just has so much more storytelling power if they're talking about Gogol.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I mean, Davies does great in the role.
Yeah.
He's not a villain, too, as soon as you see him. You're like, that guy's not. Like,
I wonder if it's one of those things where you see an actor and the kind of roles they take that there's a lack of believability kind of woven in by them even taking the role.
It's a good example of casting because you're supposed to trust him when you see him because you're like, wait a minute, how's that guy psychotic?
Yeah, it's like, no, I would trust him to join my party to go Dispatch of the One Ring.
Yeah, he was in the Fellowship. Like, he's solid.
Dispatch of the One Ring.
The
and One Ring to them all.
Number 3 reason why this wasn't better, we got to talk about the plot.
Oof. No, I thought the plot was great. Made total sense.
Really?
Made total sense.
Break it down.
How about you break it down?
I
can.
I attempted to take notes. I had to really dig in on this. So,
all right.
Feel free to chime in, both of you, if you think I'm wrong or right. So we don't know this at first. Koskov is in cahoots with Whitaker.
Okay.
Their end goal is to get rich selling heroin.
Yep.
To get heroin, they need opium, right? Which they plan on buying from an Afghan drug ring who only accept diamonds as payment. Now, to get the diamonds, they need cash. Since they apparently don't have their own money, somehow Whitaker doesn't have his own money even though he's an arms dealer, Koskov intends to use secret Soviet funds which were earmarked for the purchase of weapons from Whitaker, who the Soviets have used in the past. Koskov's superior General Pushkin, the head of the KGB, grows suspicious of him and starts sniffing around. He confronts Whitaker in Tangier and cancels the weapons order, so Koskov and Pushkin decide that they have to get rid of him. Are we in agreement on this so far?
Yeah, we're with you. We're definitely with you.
Might have missed you at a left or a right, but
here's where I think it starts to unravel. They come up with a fake defection scheme. Oh no, they did this before Pushkin confronts Whitaker in Tangier. So I'm assuming this was Koskov's idea because he seems to be the smarter of the two. He says to Whitaker, I've got it. I'll fake my defection to the British. I'll convince them that Pushkin has gone insane and initiated this Shmiat Spionum scheme to kill their agents. surely this will convince the British to kill Pushkin for us. And then I'll have Necros rescue me, fooling the British into thinking the KGB snatched me back. How could this possibly go wrong?
What do you mean? It seems like it works.
I think it fell off a little bit in Tangier.
I have some questions.
Yeah. I think things started to get derailed.
So the
before
timeline
it-
doesn't make sense, but the whole point of the fake defection thing was to get rid of Pushkin, right?
Makes sense.
But
Yep.
no, because the fake defection thing happens before Pushkin starts sniffing around. So
So-
what was the point of the Schmiet Spionum fake thing?
That
It's weird because when he defects, Koskov immediately in the debriefing is telling MI6 and the Minister of Defense, Pushkin's this big threat. He's gone crazy. But
Okay.
did they just want to get rid of him the whole time?
Yeah, because it seems like, Rube Goldberg?
Yeah. You
Seem-
brought this up with Diamonds Are Forever, too.
So forever, right? It
Yeah.
It seems like
Yes.
we know that the path to the quickest thing, just assassinate the head of the KGB, but we decided to go all the way around that to get there and also deflect blame. But
What
also,
was-
how does the head of the KGB not know that they're embezzling money?
He
Run the KGB.
he finds out, he gets suspicious, and that's why they try to have Bond kill him. But this is so the fake defection. What if Koskov died during the defection attempt? What if Necros?
The
What
plane
if-
blows up?
What if Necros failed to extract him? Like, was he just going to stay in England?
No, then Necros steps up to the main villain, and Koskov is out. But I guess you're right. Like at this point,
What-
he had no reason to actually defect.
Why involve the British at all?
He simply wouldn't.
Here's the big problem with the plot. I'm going to blow it wide open here. What is stopping them from killing Pushkin themselves?
Nothing.
Because, in
Nothing.
fact, that's their backup plan in Tangier. If you remember, Whitaker says it himself, have Necros do it. If Pushkin's still alive on the last day of the conference, kill him. So they were going to kill him anyway?
Yes, they would have just killed him sooner.
Right, but so why involve the British and MI6 and Bond at all?
Because Timothy Dalton needed a movie to be in. No, it actually makes no sense whatsoever.
No,
Also,
it's
biggest
completely
thing-
illogical.
so like, there's also like a big thing that I think the drug dealers would clarify. Like once you buy the opium, you have to make it heroin. Like, where are you going to do that?
I don't know if they thought about that.
Yeah.
Could you sell raw opium? Remember later in the movie,
I
Bond
mean-
says it's worth $500 million on the streets of New York. It's like just New York, nowhere else.
Just New York.
Just singling New York out.
Well, New York. I mean,
New York
oh,
likes
fun
to do
fact.
drugs. We know that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is
Love that
factual
H.
that
Yes.
the United States is the biggest consumer of cocaine on the
And heroin, probably.
I was gonna
and
say, but
probably heroin.
it's a lot of H though.
It's a lot
It
of
is.
age. Do they say how many tons? I mean, it's a whole airplane full. It's a shitload.
Yeah, I mean, 500
Yeah.
billion. That's like, and that was 500 billion in
500
1987.
million. 500 million.
Oh, I thought you said 500 billion. I was like, man, that's like one Elon Musk.
Yeah, but think about it. It's probably more because that's the opium. When you make it into heroin, it's probably more, right? I don't know a whole lot about turning opium into heroin, but
No,
Mm.
it is. Yeah. Okay. So now that you think about it, this guy's plan was to defect, go to the British, and then
it doesn't make sense.
I guess he was trying to throw them off the scent.
No,
That
I
he
know
was-
what he was trying to do. He was trying to get the Soviet government and the KGB to think that he defected. And he was trying to have the British think that the KGB snatched him back.
But why be so convoluted?
Right.
Correct. Like, just kill Pushkin.
Other than excuse me, other than there was a clear path to their goals, but then in terms of writing, how can we kind of create like a Russian nesting doll of events?
Good one.
Yeah. Overly complex.
It's overly
make sense.
complex, and actually, what I like about Bond in this movie is he never believes it. Even after the Bladen safe house, he still thinks it's far fetched. Remember, he still doesn't. He thinks something's wrong
Yeah. It doesn't feel right. He's human.
because the sniper is what tips him off, right? He knows Kara's
Yes.
not a real sniper. He doesn't kill her. He goes looking for her, and I mean, I guess the good thing about it is you get to see Bond doing like real spy stuff when he goes after Kara.
Binoculars.
He uses binoculars. That's true. It's just there's guns and cellos and diamonds and opium, and it's too many. It's just
They
too
were-
much.
They were snowboarding on a cello case too.
That's
holding
pretty
a
cool.
cello? That was pretty dope.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty cool.
dope.
And there's no stakes. You know, unlike an Octopussy, which we all agreed had a pretty convoluted plot, at least there was a goddamn nuclear bomb that had to be diffused from going off. Like here, it's like, okay, Koskov and Whitaker, they just make money selling drugs.
Oh, good point. I actually never thought of that. You're right,
Yeah,
though.
There's no
There's
stakes.
no-
Who cares?
Yeah, like, okay.
Other than the lack of taxes they're going to pay on those drugs that they're selling.
Right.
I mean, I feel like these movies could have been a lot easier with cryptocurrency.
Well, I miss bearer bonds, as you know, Pete. We've talked about this.
That is fair.
They don't have them in movies anymore. I understand it because they don't make them anymore. But
oh man, I feel like with that being said, Panic Room's good for a rewatch.
I think we talked about this before. I think Panic Room is the last cinematic appearance of bearer bonds.
I think you're right. I've never seen anything about him again.
Pete, you work in finance. Can you use bearer bonds anymore at this point?
You can deposit them. Like if a client calls us, like we can deposit them, but it is like
bearer bonds. Can you do anything with this?
It's like a process, dude.
Have you ever had anyone tell you they want to use bearer bonds?
No, thank God. Because like if someone said that to me, I would be like, I have to call the one guy that probably does this where I work still. Maybe?
Were you involved in the Nakatomi incident?
Yeah, like, are you like? Why do you have? First of all, why do you have bearer bonds? A ton of our clients own like physical gold, which is like
right. That's not uncommon, right?
Makes sense,
right?
Yeah.
Bearer bonds. Cool. I have a feeling most people would question like where they came from.
They have not issued bearer bonds since 1982. I googled this.
Ooh.
So it's been a while.
Well, if you ever want to get any physical gold, we can go to a coin show.
True.
I think I'm out of the physical gold business for now.
All right, moving on in the interest of time. This plot feels like a rough draft for me. I think they needed a couple of rewrites, Anton.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it though. Like you can see where it had the potential, especially from the consciousness of making it a bit more serious, of layering it to be a bit more of an espionage thriller, John le Carre, as you'd say. But shedding the fact that this is the same director from the last film, I feel like maybe it wasn't going to jump too far away, and it just seemed a bit more convoluted for its own good.
And then we haven't even talked about probably the most dated thing in the film, which is Bond teams up with the future Taliban.
Oh yes, the Mujahideen.
That didn't age well.
It did not. I don't think it's as cheesy as Rambo 3, but it's is
it one of those examples of just trying to be topical because
trying to be relevant,
but that really bites you in the butt, and it just makes it very, very dated.
Right, because the Cold War itself is not dated anymore because we're in another Cold War now.
I'm sure we're going to see new Bonds.
Right.
It kind of felt like, I don't know, like there's when people use memes that were popular like a decade ago.
Like Charlie bit me.
Which one?
Like Charlie bit me.
Oh yeah, Charlie bit my finger.
I have written down too, it doesn't make sense why Koskov has Kara drug Bond to bring them both to Afghanistan. It makes no sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
There's no reason to bring Bond there.
Like, what drugs do you think she used?
Chloral hydrate is what he says.
Just to betray him anyway?
No, that was definitely opium.
Bond tastes some on the plane or in the truck.
That's right.
Number 4 reason why this wasn't better. The second half drop off for me. Let's just go through the first half. The pre-title sequence is one of the best in the series. It's amazing action.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Really cool.
I would say the first half of this film, Anton, is peak Bond.
Yep. It's the way it sets itself up and the way it introduces its characters is fantastic. It really doesn't, it's not slow. The pacing is incredible. And you have a very strong sense of who this Bond is, what his motivations are, and how annoyed he is with the institution.
It's perfect Cold War intrigue.
And the stunts are sick.
They're awesome.
These 3 dudes just hop out of a plane at the beginning of the movie.
After the pre-title sequence, we get the title song, of course. We'll get to the soundtrack. So the sniper scene is what follows. Mm-hmm. That is directly from the short story. That's what the short story is about. The sniper plot. First of all, did you like his trick tuxedo that turned into a turtleneck?
Gadget.
That's
awesome.
Been a
good gadget use.
I've seen that in other it's been an homage in other.
It's
properties.
Awesome. It's perfect. Yeah. And then
it's so cool.
Call of Duty fans may recognize Bond is using a Walther WA 2000 sniper rifle.
That looks sick.
They only made 78 of them.
limited edition.
It was it's a super rare firearm. If you see one in real life, which I have, if you get an opportunity to fire it, do it, because they're like 30 grand if you want one. Anton, we get some Roger Moore era holdovers here. Like the woman distracting the oil pipeline supervisor with her boobs is just, it's awful.
Oh,
it's like
man.
it's like Austin Powers. Like
Cinematic genius.
It doesn't fit in with this film at all.
No. But does it feel like the 80s?
It does feel like the 80s. Have either of you seen the magic carpet scene that they cut out of this?
Magic carpet? No. Tell me.
Bond escapes during the foot chase on the rooftops in Tangier by putting a carpet onto wires and sliding down it. And he goes by some gentlemen who are smoking maybe opium. They did the wrong thing by not including it.
I'm going to watch that because I feel like I'd really, really want to see that.
Oh, yeah.
It's as bad as you think it is.
It is, I can confirm.
I'm sure that feels really dated, having that in the film.
Good thing it's not in here.
Right.
You're annoyed by Saunders at first in the first half. I came around on it to the point where I felt terrible when he gets killed.
I wouldn't say terrible.
I did. He had a real arc. You don't usually see that from like a Bond ally like that.
He's cannon fodder.
Does.
No, I'm just kidding. I did feel bad when he died.
And then
I didn't like him at the beginning of the movie, but I think they wrote it that way for a specific reason.
They did, for sure. Still in the first half, the entire chunk of the film where Bond is getting Kara out of Czechoslovakia with the Aston Martin, and then the ski chase where they're in the cello case, it's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
Best Aston Martin in the series? For me, it is.
Yes.
Ooh.
Well, yes.
Anton, that is my favorite Aston Martin, I think. Yeah. What an awesome car.
It's interesting how now I'm guessing then fully Aston Martin was a sponsor in this film.
Yes and no. The official car sponsor of this film was Audi.
Oh, okay.
Bond is driving an Audi in the sniper sequence with Saunders, and then in Tangier, he's driving an Audi.
Because I know it's changed a bit film to film.
It has. But of course, Aston Martin and Audi aren't competitors, so I assume that's why. Yeah.
As long as it's not an Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, Pete just gave me a look. You're perplexed by the Audis, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's Audi. Yeah, there's Audis in here. This would have been early Audi.
Yeah, like this is when Audis were actually. I'm gonna be careful what I say.
Pete's like, I might own one. I don't know.
Maybe not.
VW, it's all the same.
Yeah, I know. I own a little. I'm a VW guy, so I own Audi Junior.
Anton, what's your favorite part of this film? Like sequence?
I mean, it has to be the opening sequence.
The pre-title?
Yeah, pre-title.
I think for me, I agree with you. And just going into the sniper sequence,
yeah,
it's great.
It's just so good.
Interesting. I thought it was cool, but I like the snow scene.
The snow scene's great.
Yeah,
it's
cool. It's
snow
fun.
action. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I like that. So I would say that's mine. That's my favorite part of the movie.
So, and then we get to Tangier. It slows down a little bit for me. And it really slows down for me in the second half when they get into Afghanistan. This is where it starts to falter for me.
Do you feel like that's where trying to expand upon the novel just didn't do them good?
I felt the first half was paced better. Well, I don't want to be too harsh on the Tangier scene because we get the assassination scene in Pushkin and then we get the rooftop chase, which I think is great. It's really weird when Bond meets up with Felix Leiter. Like, you know, when those two hot women get him to go in the car with him, it just feels like something from a comedy. It's really weird.
Austin Powers.
This is something that happens in a lot of different kinds of films where something exists only to provide exposition, Anton. We already know what Koskov and Whitaker are up to as the audience, but Bond is behind the 8 ball. So they shove in this scene with Felix Leiter to catch Bond up to speed. Do you know what I mean?
Just build in that exposition a bit.
Yeah, and that's fine if the audience doesn't know what the villains are up to either. But the fact that you're just waiting for Bond to get told
what's happening
by Leiter what's happening is pretty lame to me. And also, this is a terrible Felix Leiter. No offense to John Terry.
No, I agree with you. Not my favorite.
The thing that really rubbed me the wrong way is, look, the mini bar on Felix's yacht, it contains Jack Daniels and Jim Beam. Like, that's disgusting.
But it was 87, so this is like the heyday.
They had better liquor back then, Pete. They did.
Did it taste the same in 87? It must have. Look, they've had very nice alcohol for hundreds of thousands of years.
True, yeah. You're right. Because like Louis the 13th is like 100 years. Yeah, you're not wrong.
They had better bourbon in 1987. They did.
Like
Yeah.
Like you shoot to a shot in his boat and it's Coors Light and Michelob Light.
Oh my gosh. It's funny you say that, Pete, because in the next film, License to Kill, one of the many reasons why I don't like that film is they order Bud Light with lime. I'm not making this up.
Before Bud Light Lime?
Oh, this is years before that. Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
This was 1989.
But Bud Light was very happy about it.
I'm sure.
Good old Budweiser.
Where do you guys stand on my theory about the second half? Do you agree?
I feel the same way, but I think when it comes to overall experience, I don't think maybe it bothers me as much.
Yeah.
It definitely does. It definitely does feel a bit more clunky than the first half.
Yeah. It is clunky, but I didn't notice it. I didn't find myself like sitting there saying, when is it going to be over, when it was going to be over. And I think it was, but I think maybe it was because of the hilarity of some of the things that were happening, like you're partnering with a future terrorist organization. Like I felt like I was experiencing emotions throughout the movie, so I didn't notice the pacing at all. Like I knew the movie was 2 hours and 10 minutes, but it didn't feel like 2 hours.
I think part of it for me might just be personal preference. You know, Bond is very famous for its exotic locations, and Afghanistan just sucks.
Yeah. No,
I think the
I
criticism's
hear you.
fair, right? It's
I
not
hear you.
Monaco. I get that.
Right.
And plus, just kind of the nature of it, it's a bit more dated. So then it just feels
Yeah,
a little.
the Taliban
out of
stuff
place.
doesn't help.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's also
no, I get that.
I get it. See, I found myself like kind of like watching that movie, and I was like, man, 87, huh? I was like, if they only would have known.
Although I think maybe the best action set piece in the film is the plane fight. It's
Yes.
pretty awesome.
Ooh.
When he's lighting up people with that AK at the end, I was like,
Yeah.
this is the best thing.
So
And then the
good.
two guys that jump out of the back of the plane, the pilots,
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought that was one of the better scenes in the movie. The end
Yeah.
action scene was pretty cool.
I kind of felt like a little bit of a callback to Octopussy first-person machine gun rail shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the other problems I have with the second half too is this kind of has multiple endings. None of them are completely satisfying to me. This is what I want your take on, Anton. I can find nothing on the internet to back this up or confirm this, so this is just a theory. I think Koskov was very obviously supposed to die at the airbase when his Jeep crashes into that plane. The shot of him surviving it, you know, where you see him like the
Is
Jeep's
that
on
a-
fire and he's like, oh! It looks like something from The Naked Gun. It looks like slapstick to me. I have scoured the internet trying to find any type of confirmation on this, but I think it has to be a reshoot. I think he was definitely supposed to die there, and test audiences didn't like it, or they decided that it would have been more dramatic for him to survive. But I can't even figure out why, because when he reappears at the end, you know, at Whitaker's compound, he just gets taken away by Pushkin's men. Like, what's the point?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think I think you're totally right. I think there definitely was not even just that scene, but just in general, a bit more humor inserted into the script because of the direction of Bond at the time. So we don't get, even though we do have a lot of the grounded elements that we've talked about, it wasn't until the next film that I really think that the studio overall said, hey, like, let's really turn it up a notch darkness wise.
They tried.
Yeah. But I think that with this particular film, you get a lot of great inspiration for Austin Powers.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Which came out
97.
94
90s, yeah,
okay,
95, right?
97.
I have to always remember it was after So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yeah. That was like, what, 93, 94? Yeah, and then you get Bond coming to the rescue of the future Taliban.
In all fairness, Bond didn't know that they would be the Taliban.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And then we get Bond sneaking into Whitaker's compound where he, you know, ends up killing him.
Do you think has there been any, I tried to look this up, has there been any like meme or reference to like canceling James Bond because he originally joined the Taliban in the 80s?
Nah, people don't go back that far.
Not to my knowledge.
No way. They don't go back that far.
I'd find that hilarious.
It would be obscure and only Bond fans would get it. Did you recognize Art Malik from True Lies?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like he shouldn't have been there. He didn't need to be there. His talents could have been used elsewhere.
Last reason, the production.
Oof.
What do we think of Kara as the Bond girl?
Not my favorite Bond girl. She's all right. She's playful.
Yeah, I liked her. I didn't mind her, but she wasn't the typical Bond girl that you see in all the Bond girl movies.
No, she's supposed to be clueless, the fish
Yeah.
out of water.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think she fits that role perfectly.
She does, She does. She doesn't really sleep with Bond until the end. It's like, get with the program.
HIV, gotta be sure.
AIDS, gotta watch out.
Yeah.
Philadelphia.
That was after this.
It was after this.
Didn't stop Bond in the next film, though.
Nope. That was Jonathan Demme.
Didn't stop Bond in the next film from banging a drug lord's mistress.
Good for him.
Which seems way more risky than HIV to me, but...
Which seems way less like a Bond film.
Okay, moving on. Miriam Diabo's acting is fine. You know, the character is meant to be the damsel in distress, and I think she does an okay job of that. She is, like, awkwardly naive, though, like a child. I mean, it doesn't help that Bond takes her to a carnival. But it is kind of weird how Koskov gets her to be the fake sniper. It's like, she's, like, clearly not that bright.
Right? Like, his plan wasn't very well thought out.
It's a weird plan.
I feel like most of these Bond villains are going to, like, the same villain academy.
The part I laughed at the most is when Bond is in the plane and he's trying to get her to drive the Jeep into the plane, and he's, like, trying to signal her, like, drive in, and she just doesn't get it, and he's just like... There's no other Bond girl to talk about other than Margot on the yacht in the beginning. No, Margot's friend. She's on the phone with Margot. We don't even know her real name.
Yeah, and then she's just there on a boat by herself drinking champagne, waiting for a man to fly out of the sky. He
has the greatest setup ever. She's like, if only I could find a real man.
That that definitely shapes your adolescence.
It does. Yeah, Robert Brown. He's not the best M, Anton, but I think this is his best performance as M in his 4 appearances. Like I said this earlier, you don't see him quarreling with Bond often, and I liked those scenes.
Do you like the new Moneypenny?
Yeah.
She's a smoke show.
He's thirsty for Bond, though.
I had forgotten how attractive this Moneypenny is.
It's a good reminder. Women were very attractive in the 80s.
They were. She's got the 80s glasses on, which she just sells it.
Yeah.
Too hot to be Moneypenny? She could have been the Bond girl.
She could have been.
Maybe she was the Bond girl.
I think that's kind of a fun take on the Moneypenny character.
It is interesting how they replace Moneypenny, but they don't replace M or Q.
Yeah, they don't.
Pete, did your power go out?
No, I'm actually sitting in the dark and I haven't moved yet.
Okay.
That's what Pete wants.
Hold on.
No, you're right, Pat. It is a little interesting. And well, they have the same character or the same actor for Q for a while.
Forever until he died.
Judi Dench, right?
Yeah.
Oh, not Q. Sorry.
Yeah. Q's lab scenes are pretty funny. We get the ghetto blaster.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it. Thought it was wild. Something we're making for the Americans.
Yeah, I mean it's dated, but it's funny.
Yes.
It's just a great name, Ghetto Blaster. Like
it was gold. And it's a boombox? Come on, guys. That's absolutely gold.
The music that boombox is playing is possibly the most 80s music I've ever heard.
I liked it, man. I felt like I had to have big hair at like parts in that movie to really enjoy it.
And it wouldn't be an older 80s Bond movie without some misogyny. Did you notice Bond slaps Moneypenny's ass?
No, I didn't catch that.
It's not shown on screen. The only reason I know it is I had the subtitles on, and you hear it, and it says like slapping buttocks in the subtitles.
Yes. You hear it. You definitely hear it.
Definitely hear it.
I didn't even catch that. I thought this was when he fixed her glasses?
Right, in the same scene, yeah.
I don't even remember that. I remember him fixing glasses, and I was like, oh man, Moneypenny thirsty. I didn't see anything about slapping her butt. Wow. All right. Got to go back and rewatch it.
My take on this for you, Anton, since you've seen all of them, they half-assed this because I think with Dalton, they needed a full reboot, and they didn't do it.
Agreed.
It's the same writers, the same director, the same crew. The tone was definitely more serious from A View to a Kill, but they still have some of the Moore era jokes that they couldn't get away from. I just wish they had replaced everyone and started with a clean slate. Yeah, like they did with the Brosnan era. They just clean slate.
They waited right before they finally released Brosnan's first 007.
Yeah. Now they didn't wait out of design. They waited because there was a massive legal battle that we can talk about in a later episode. Yeah, the problem happened in 1989 when MGM got bought by a bigger French company, and there was a multi-year lawsuit. But we can get to that later. This is John.
Amazon.
What was it?
Called Amazon.fr.
Not unlike it. It's called Path A Communications.
Oh, yeah, I know them.
Yeah,
PATHE.
they're still around. Yeah,
They own some really good horror movies, actually.
they do.
Completely random.
They do.
Really random.
Really
Yeah.
random. Okay. I don't really care for a lot of the production of this film, but as John Barry's final contribution to the series, this score is an effing banger.
It was different. It was definitely different.
Oh,
Dug it.
so good.
There were many times. I remember when I was first starting the movie, and you start seeing the pre-sequence like Bond stuff, and then you hear that tune drop, and I was like, okay, I could groove to this. And then you're like,
We're getting a full orchestra, a drum machine, synthesizers, electric guitar. It's spectacular.
it was great.
Yeah. John Barry's ability to just evolve with the times and also just set these just amazing, just set the scenes amazingly with his scores is just, it's impeccable.
I'm a big fan of the title song too. I really like it.
I liked it.
I wrote down, it sounds so amazingly European.
Yeah, it really take on me.
It's fair, actually.
All the songs, you get 2 Pretender songs, which I don't really even know how they ended up contributing to this. I think they might have were gonna do the title song before, and then they didn't, but I like the fact that what I really find interesting, which I think is unique for the series, is the score is also diegetic because Necros is listening to the Pretenders on his Walkman. Did you notice this?
We see a little bit of that. What is it? You mentioned the term diegetic.
You're right. We have seen this.
Yeah.
In Live and Let Die and Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a callback to that.
Good catch, Anton. And I just love how Barry works that into the score. It's like Necros' theme. He gets his own theme music. It's pretty awesome.
Bro, I'm just saying, you talk about a meme, Necros for lead villain, it's a movement.
I wonder, like, it's so amazing. Also, just kind of the on-set or live location shooting versus set location shooting. I feel like they really did an awesome job building out the sets in the film. I mean,
you like the sets in here?
Pinewood Studios.
I like the sets. I am once again unimpressed by the cinematography.
Really?
A lot of the interior scenes are lit with that. It looks like there's a giant white light hanging above the camera, just shining down on it. It looks like stage lighting.
It still kind of carries that same, what is it, TV, made for TV aesthetic.
It does.
But I do think, though, that the sets looked really good despite it.
All right, so to paraphrase, they told Pierce Brosnan he couldn't have the movie because they didn't want to be associated with TV. So they made a movie that looked like TV with a different James Bond.
A little bit.
Okay.
And the next movie, License to Kill, looks even worse than this. It really looks like a TV movie.
Yeah.
Like a sci-fi? Like a C-, like Friday night horror movie?
You'll watch it and let me know what you think, because I think it's one of the worst shot films in the series. But what elevates this film, The Living Daylights, for me above TV quality is the action is amazing. I think the set pieces are fantastic.
Do you think a lot of that is just Dalton, though?
I think it's Dalton. I think John Glenn knows how to edit. You know, like For Your Eyes Only, Anton, we talked about how good the set pieces are in there. So, like, he clearly knows how to stage action. But Dalton, I think the arrival of Dalton, I think they realized, like, this guy can do a lot of things physically that maybe Moore couldn't do.
It's different talent.
Yeah.
It's the same thing where you see a single shot of, like, Dalton throwing a punch. It looks very believable.
Just, there's a lot more creativity in this one than A View to a Kill for me. Like, the pre-title sequence alone is better than any of the action in A View to a Kill.
Oh, yeah. Just hands down.
Milk bottle bombs. Completely original. I've never seen anything quite like it. And in fact, that's a pretty unique action scene because it's one of the most memorable set pieces in the film, and Bond's not in it. He's absent. We get that great fight in the kitchen. That's better than anything in A View to a Kill.
Great use of the set.
It's awesome. You're right about that. That, like, stuff like that, yes.
Like, I feel like it's an enclosed set, and I feel like the choreography was like, make this creative, use the environment,
make it look like two guys trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
The Aston Martin car chase is great,
Unbelievable,
and the airbase stuff. I mean, the plane stunts. You can, if you watch the making of documentary of this, they really were filming two guys hanging off the back of a plane for some of those shots.
It's crazy to even think about. Like, that's how they're going to film it.
That's what they did back then. They had a large miniature for some of the shots. It's pretty seamless. Some of the shots are forced perspective. There's a miniature landscape just a few feet below them, and they're just pulling it underneath the camera with like, giant fans to simulate the wind.
It's like flying.
You can't even tell. It's great.
Yeah.
Did you notice this is the Aston Martin that reappears in No Time to Die?
It's a good call out.
The one that Bond digs out of the garage when he gets back to London.
Very interesting. Too, is it a very conscious call out to?
Oh yeah.
Timothy Dalton?
Had to be. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I know. We know our roots.
Yeah. No Time to Die. Which one was the one where they invaded his house?
Skyfall.
That was Skyfall.
Skyfall. Okay.
That, of course, had the original
Machine
1964 Aston Martin.
Yeah.
Machine gun Aston Martin.
Yes.
Doesn't make sense, but I loved it.
Doesn't make sense. Did you like Bond's keyring gadget?
I did like his gadgets. I thought they were pretty cool.
I do too.
Yeah, good guy. I'm always a big gadget guy when I get to these. I love the scenes where they're just talking randomly at HQ, and then all of a sudden he's like, "New gadget." I'm like, now we're talking.
We didn't get a ton of gadgets either in A View to a Kill. So,
well, you didn't like the spy robot?
when did they use the spy robot other than to just be voyeurs?
Wait, Anton, how dare you slander View to a Kill like that? He had a Sharper Image credit card.
That's right. That's right. That was quite. That was quite a gadget. That's right.
Cool store that no one ever bought anything from.
Dude,
Sky Mall, man.
Growing up, whenever we went to the mall, without a doubt, we'd go to the Sharper Image store because I'd be like, I just want to test out whatever
massage
chair
chair
they
You
have.
never bought anything, right?
No,
never bought anything.
it's because the massage chair was $6,000. That's why.
But hey, like they also have like that pin cushion thing that you can put your hands in to make like a handprint, or the flowing waterfall ball thing.
Right. Yes.
All things that I would definitely use on a daily
Didn't
basis.
you confirm this, Anton, on the last episode? It still exists.
Yes, it does.
It's
But
still
it's
around.
I saw one probably like a few months ago in a store of like a mall that was like failing. And I was like, man, they must just be like the last.
We have a few failing malls around here. I'm still trying to find like that one last store that sells like fountain pens and swords. That's the 90s. That's the 90s for
in
me.
Our mall here, GameStop just closed. I know. That's how you know
They're closing a lot of them. They're closing a lot of them.
I mean, I get it.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I know we have to go soon, Pete, so I'm going to try to run through the rest of this. I think the wardrobe in here is really low key, but I actually really like what he's wearing.
Dude, I always forget to do that until you point it out. Like to look at his wardrobe and like look at his watch. Like I'll notice it, I'll see it in my head, but I don't look at it.
Go to bondsuits.com if you want a detailed breakdown of each film.
Oh,
it's the best site for this. Bondsuits.com.
You always bring
Dalton
this up
carries
at the
himself
end and I
well.
forget it.
Yeah.
Sorry, Anton.
Anton, I know you pay attention to this, so I can go through this. In the Czechoslovakian sequence when he's getting Kara out, he's got this charcoal sweater on underneath like a leather car coat.
I do remember that. Sick.
Can't forget his Mujahideen outfit.
Oh, the Aladdin costume? Yes.
Yeah.
Earlier in the film, he's wearing a three-piece gray suit, which is really nice.
Love that.
He's got a tan suit on in Tangier, which looks awesome. Love a good tan
Tangier.
suit.
I remember that too.
The rooftop chase, he's got a khaki windbreaker on, khaki slacks, and like a navy polo shirt, kind of like this. I just like it. It's pretty timeless stuff he's got on. It just, because the late 80s, let's face it, some of the clothes were pretty damn ugly, but none of the stuff he's wearing, it's a great example. Like a lot of the Bond films that we talk about, good clothes don't age.
Yeah, and you could totally see these same outfits today and just people rocking it. It's more of the henchmen in the film that look a bit more dated.
Necros with his acid wash jeans.
Yeah, or what was it, the banana hammock?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, there's going to be a movement. Just be ready.
In the Bladen safe house, Anton, he's got a gun check tweed jacket on, which is like one of my favorite jackets in the whole series.
It's pretty sick.
Yeah, I've been looking for a good version of that for a while. I haven't quite found anything
I was
like
going to
it.
say, I'm sure that's hard to find.
Yes, what I should have said is I'm trying to find something like it that isn't like $800.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say probably like your best bet's going to thrift shops, right?
I've been looking.
Yeah.
It's a pretty specific, unique pattern. The gun check. Pete's Googling this, I can see. It's look up gun check jacket living daylights. Just Google that. Bondsuits.com was the first result you'll get.
Yeah, this thing's sick.
Yeah, it's timeless.
That's sick.
Pete, this last one's for you. This film is the only appearance in the series of Tag Heuer.
Let's go. Big tag guy here. Big tag guy.
You can get this watch if you want. It is a Aqua Racer Night Diver.
Unfortunately, I won't wear that one.
Why not?
I know exactly what it is.
Oh,
It's
not
not
a
my
fan.
style.
Okay.
Not my style.
All right.
Not my
Jeez.
style.
Okay. Sorry. I brought it
Sorry.
up.
Is it just a little? Is
No.
it too big? Is that it? Like the watch face?
Yeah, I'm not a big, I don't like huge watch faces.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong. I would absolutely, I lied. If you give it to me, I'll wear it.
I was going to
Who
say,
am I
like, what
talking?
the hell are you talking about? You would
Yeah,
wear
no,
that.
that's completely false. I'm sorry. I've been drinking.
It sort of reminds me of the Omega Seamaster, which would come in the Brosnan era.
Yeah,
Dive
okay.
watch. I mean, it's
Yeah, I can see that.
not
Dive watches being a pretty iconic part of Bond. So
Anton. At some point, to celebrate some milestone in the history of the podcast, we're both going to have to get Rolex Submariners.
Yeah, I think so. Should we 250th episode?
I don't know if I can fork that out by the time we get to 250. That's like
because that's coming up.
If conservatively, this is going to cost us like $6,000 to $10,000 each.
1,000.
But it's, you know what, Pat? We'll go to a watch show. How about that?
You don't get deals on Submariners. Yeah, Pete knows his watches.
Unless
don't go on sale.
You have to buy more than one.
Yeah,
from the same
true,
guy.
But yeah,
actually, that might be the best angle. You buy more than one from the same guy, you get the best deal.
Yeah, but then you also need to be able to buy 10.
No, I know people that have gotten 2 for like a slight discount.
Is that it though? We buy 5, really good price, and then we sell at a watch convention.
It sounds like the plot of the next Bond movie. If I wanted to launder money, how about we get 3 watches, 2 that we don't need, and we resell them at a watch service. Then after that, we take the money and we can go buy opium with no plan to refine it and resell it for no apparent reason whatsoever.
But we need diamonds, and we'll disguise it as ice, smuggling a pig's heart.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
It's a little dramatic.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have run through all of the notes. Do either of you have anything to add about anything in the production or any of the reasons that we've just gone through?
Just want to say this: people should visit the Roger Dalton chapter a bit more frequently.
Roger Dalton, what a legend.
Timothy Lazenby, what a guy. I thought you were going to say people should visit Afghanistan because it's the best Bond location.
Look, I like
flex.
their food. I like their food. That's about it.
It wasn't even filmed there, so we don't have to worry.
Yeah, was it filmed in Morocco?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like so much good food in Central Asia.
You're not wrong. So we've been talking about Dalton, the villains, the convoluted plot, the second half drop-off, things about the production. Let's wrap this up and give our ratings. Of course, Pete, as the guest, you have the opportunity to go first if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll take it. So I heard the criticisms, enjoyed the discussion. This is my precursor to this is my first. Damn it! I want to say Roger Dalton. This is my first Timothy Dalton movie. The plot was overly complex. It was kind of wild. I respect the actor. I think he played a great job. It was a different type of Bond movie that I've seen, and I loved it. I thought the stunts were cool. I hear people about the pacing, but I was engaged, so it didn't really bother me. And yeah, the villains weren't cool, but overall, if I had to give it a good grade, I think I'm still leaning to like a solid B or B plus. I overall enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed it a lot. I did.
Did you like it more than Octopussy? Because you gave that a B.
I did. B plus.
Okay. B plus.
Yeah, B plus.
I like the enthusiasm. I'll take this one, Anton. The plot and the villain are the biggest problems with this for me. They're both pretty weak. The former is overwritten, overcomplicated, and we tried to go through it. It really doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The latter is simply a matter of I just don't think either of the actors were good enough. Koskov and Whitaker, they aren't compelling, and I think their plan is a jumbled mess that amounts to really nothing more than selling drugs, which is not the stakes that I really want in a Bond film. I do think the film starts to drag when they get to Afghanistan, and like a lot of Bond movies, I think it's 10 minutes too long. I think if they had trimmed out a few things here and there, it would have flowed better in the second half. Despite these flaws, it still manages to be top-tier Bond for me. The things that it does well, it does really well. Dalton hit the ground running with his debut. I think he's fantastic here. The hard-edge stuff that he brings to the screen is great to watch. And, we're almost 40 years removed from this film at this point. His performance has just aged so well. He was really ahead of his time. All the stuff you read about Dalton is correct in my opinion. I really like him. The set pieces are outstanding. The action is some of the best in the series. I had forgotten how good the action is. It's a shame that some of the interior scenes are filmed like a TV episode, but Necros is awesome. I think Kara makes a pretty good Bond girl, but not my favorite, not even close. John Barry's final score is one of the best. I like the title song. I really do think the first half is just some of the best stuff in the series. There's a lot to like here. I still stand by what I said earlier, which is Bond really needed a full reboot with the crew and a lot of the cast, and they half-assed it here. We got a new Bond and a new Moneypenny, but really not much else. Same M, same Q, same director, most importantly, same writers, same crew. I think that everything was starting to feel a little stale in the production department. I'm a little on the fence of how to rate this, and if either of you want to give me your input and maybe influence me a little bit, I was thinking C+ or B-. I'm leaning towards B- just because of how much I like the first half and how much I like Dalton's performance in this.
B-, Pat. You said a lot more positive things than you did negative things.
I would say objectively, and it's also part of where I land. I land at a B-, and I will just say this: Dalton carries the film.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
B-
Not
it
even
is
fair.
then.
I think that's so accurate.
Well, everyone already knows my reason, so I'll just simply say this. I'll simply say this: Dalton carries this film, and the Timothy Dalton chapter is very short. It's a tale of two films, and we just very recently ranked the Roger Moore era, and we could very quickly do an episode where we rank the Timothy Dalton chapter, but it would just be a very short episode. Spoiler alert, this is I prefer this film to License to Kill. And I think that one of the key reasons is it just feels so refreshing, and it is just such a great take to have Timothy Dalton. But at the same time, it is amazing to see not only that subtlety in character, but despite factors outside of his performance, I feel like it was still such an entertaining film. And things outside of Timothy Dalton's performance, of course, carryovers from the Roger Moore era, same crew, same director, then made for TV, quality budget, but such an influential film and such an influential actor. And I'm, as much as, I'm not as much of a fan of License to Kill, I'm definitely excited to talk more about Dalton just because of his influence, and just, yeah, it's a short but I think really fun stint as Bond. So yeah, I give this one a B-. It was very entertaining.
Well, that is it for The Living Daylights. Pete, glad you could join for this one. You're hitting all the actors now.
I'm trying, man. I'm actually really enjoying this because I feel privileged because I'm seeing everyone for the first time.
I told you before, I envy you in some ways.
I get to literally analyze each Bond knowing nothing else about the previous Bond, except I saw a movie like 4 or 5 years there. Before that.
You should watch the really old Casino Royales.
So I bought the Amazon set, which actually, now that I think about it, it's stupid that I actually paid for Living Daylights, but I'll give him $3.
It won't have the Casino Royale that Anton's talking about.
Why?
It's not an official Bond, and it was a parody.
It had a lot of James Bonds in it.
Oh, that's cool.
It's not,
but not.
It's not.
Oh.
It's directed by 5 people.
Oh, so we don't. Okay, I'm not even going to waste my time on it then.
I mean,
I think that
it's a mess. It's a total mess of a movie.
It would actually be an interesting idea. Get all of the Bonds together in one movie and make them all different.
It's none of the Bonds you're thinking.
It's none of them.
No.
But what's really interesting about it is it shares its same namesake, of course, with the Casino Royale film that eventually we got with Daniel Craig. But I remember watching that when I was a lot younger, and being like, "This is not the James Bond that I know."
This is not good.
It does have Orson Welles as Le Chiffre.
Yes,
and Orson Welles was just his wonderful baritone. He had this. I don't know if you know who Orson Welles is, Pete, but he had this just incredible narrator's baritone voice. If you've ever seen Pinky and the Brain,
yes,
the Brain is his voice is modeled after Orson Welles.
And Pinky is what's his name? Nutty Professor.
Eddie Murphy?
Not Eddie Murphy, the original.
Oh.
Jerry Lewis?
Yeah, I see him as Jerry Lewis type.
Yeah, I can see that. We need to cover something with Orson Welles in it. We can do the voice. It's just spectacular. For my next trick, I'm going to make this bottle of bourbon disappear. Well, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a follow and a 5-star review. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. For those who would like to support us directly, we have a Patreon. Links are in the description. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.